final guest of the day. Can't wait to talk to this man. You know him. We found out a couple of weeks ago that unfortunately he would not be retiring in Seattle this weekend. We spoke to him when the news came out about the fight. And as they say, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. But for Dominick Cruz, unfortunately, this is how it ends. But what a career, Hall of Famer, one of one, pioneer, trailblazer, all those things and more. And he's kind enough to join us to talk about it all. Here he is. Hello, Dom. How are you?
What's up, Ariel? I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us. Can I be honest with you, Dom? Can I be sincere with you right now?
I would hope you always are.
I know. You know what? As I said that, I knew you were going to say that back. I knew you were going to say that because you say that someone says that implies that they aren't always sincere, and I'd like to think that I am. When I saw your message, when I saw the Instagram post when you announced this news, I got very emotional, Dom. I got very emotional, and I think I know why. But you represent such a great period in the sport, and you've brought us along the journey for so long, and you've been so inspirational, and I really hurt for you. I was really hurting for you. I felt. I don't want to say I felt your pain because you were going through serious physical pain there, but it really bummed me out. And so I'm just curious. A couple of weeks later, how are you dealing with how the active portion of your career ends?
I think the hardest part about the whole thing is that other people are bummed out. It's a choice. It's literally a choice to be happy. And the normal thing would be, oh, I should look and be sad because that's how it should look for other people. That was the first thought. Like, I shouldn't enjoy my life because I don't deserve to, because I pulled out of this fight. But at the end of the day, I've got a lot of practice in injuries, unfortunately, but also fortunately, to where that's always the conversation that comes up first for me. It's you don't deserve to enjoy your life unless you can go out there and follow through with the goal that you set. So I set my goal to get through on this fight, and I'll be honest, like, I was on borrowed time when I booked this fight, but because of the state of my body leading into that, I was very confident that I could make it, and so I booked the fight. Unfortunately, the arm gave out, and it had given out before, but this time it was different. It was kind of a basic position. So it just, as you can see on the one on the left, my left, it's completely out. And the problem was when it sits out like that, the pain is just absolutely excruciating, and it wouldn't go back in. So when they went to move it back in, shout out to the PI trainers, they're very good. The first time I did it, they were able to slide it right back in within 3 minutes. This time they lifted me up by a towel on my shoulder, and the muscles locked it into place. And so I had to go to the hospital, and that made it a completely different experience. It was out of place for about an hour 15 to hour 30 minutes, just sitting out of socket. And you kind of find Jesus in a time like that, to be honest. It's just excruciating pain. And at the end of the day, when your arm starts turning blue, I've said this in other interviews, and you can see that they're making sure my fingers are still working before they slide it back into place. It's like, okay, is fighting worth as much as my arm? Because there's a possibility if I keep this route, the arm just stops working. You're not able to lift it. You're not able to see, I can do all this because it's been about 13 days removed and it's back in socket. But because I'm not fighting, that might save my shoulder for the rest of my life. And that's
Wow.
the big picture. It's, do you want your shoulder, or is the money you're getting paid worth your arm? And for me, I'm not getting paid big enough dollars that it's worth my arm. Maybe if I was making, a few million, maybe that might change it. I might have gone in there and figured out how to make it work at 50% on one arm and 100% on my other. But with the amount of money I'm getting paid, wasn't worth the livelihood of my brain and my body.
And how did it happen? How did the injury happen?
I was grappling. I was doing get up from the bottom drills, half guard, and I've done it a million times. You post on your elbow, and then you turn your hips over to get to a single. And when I posted on the elbow and then pulled through, it just shot out the back. And it was just a basic thing I've done a million times. So that's when the realization of, if you can't make it through the normal grunt everyday movements in camp, then I would be subsidizing and not showing up as the best version of myself, which, kind of then I'm fighting for money. And that's not why I started this thing. When I started fighting, it was illegal to fight in every state. And I was essentially paying money to fight just because I enjoy it and I love to compete and I love to be a winner. And if I'm not setting myself up like that, then, it's just better that I don't do that to the fans, myself, or the sport,
Do you
from my
need
opinion.
do you need surgery?
I'll know this week. I'll find out this week. I got the MRI last week in Mexico City, and I'm waiting on the results back from them. A little bit slower. Hopefully, I got them back today, and I'll know. But the big thing, Ariel, is when you have a shoulder injury like mine, you don't have to do surgery because I'm able to move it. The problem is at any given time in my life now, and I'll never know when, it could just pop out again. I could be snowboarding. I could be throwing a baseball. I could be, hanging out with my family and I decide to lean on my arm and it feels fine. And then I turn the wrong way and it slides out. When you get a surgery, it closes the gap. It brings the tendons back together depending on how bad the damage is. And then there's less chance of it sliding in and out. So that's what the surgery would be about. And I'm not 100% sure if I'll want that or need that because surgeries, I already got it cut once. It's a very delicate, crappy process. So I don't know if I'll do it or not.
The reality that you won't fight again. How are you dealing with that?
I mean, it's comes and goes, right? If you're going to be honest with yourself, it's like mourning the loss of somebody when you lose the sport, when you do it as much as I do. But I'm still so involved in the sport. I'd like to get back to Mexico City, help those guys out, help Dana with his ideas there. I'll be giving back to the sport the whole time. I pulled out of this fight so that I could still use my shoulder to train athletes, to work, to still move around and do what I want to do and, still stay dangerous. It's important for me as just a man to be dangerous all the time. So I'll still be very dangerous. And that's the key for me. It's not about retirement and get fat and get lazy. My brain doesn't work that way. It's stay as dangerous as I can. That's the reason I started this sport. And essentially paid to do it was because I wanted to be dangerous. And so that'll stay. That won't change. I'll stay active. I'll stay moving. And I'm lifting every day and doing what I need to for physical therapy. So, not competing at the highest level, I gave everything I have to it. So at the end of the day, I can kind of surrender to it, let go, and then receive what comes next.
That feeling that you talked about at the beginning, where people are telling you that they're bummed for you, and then you have to sort of say like, I'm not dead. I'm able to be happy. It's just the end of one chapter. How do you handle that? And did you feel those feelings of guilt? Like, why should like I understand?
Great question.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ariel. Honestly, that right there. What you're asking me is the hardest thing. It's other people's vision of me, and then you kind of sort through what you think they're thinking about. I'll speak for myself. I kind of sort through what I believe they're thinking of me, and the longer you go down the road, and the more people you go through that, the more I realize it's not them that I'm looking at. I'm looking at myself through their eyes and I'm judging myself. It has nothing to do with other people. That's the hardest thing is I feel like I don't deserve. I feel like, I let people down. I feel like I said I was going to do something and I didn't get to follow through and do it. But it's not a fact that makes me not worth it, that I can't enjoy my life, that I can't do all these things. I made that up. And, so the hard part is just noticing that those are thoughts that come up for me and that they're not real. Like most people are just can't believe I did what I did up till this point. Most people, it's always like I'm thinking people are thinking bad about me. And really it could easily go the other way. I'm thinking bad about myself. And so that's the constant hurdle, Ariel, is when you see other people looking at you, it's not them looking at you and giving their judgments of me. It's me giving judgments of myself. And I just assume that that's what they're thinking when I look in their eyes. And that doesn't go away until I do my own healing, until I forgive myself.
So what's interesting about that is in the aftermath of you sharing this news, you were showered with love and praise. And obviously, I'm not going so in the weeds with all the messages that you're getting, but I didn't see people. I express sadness only because like you represent an era, and for me personally, you represent someone as well, and so everyone has their own connection to you. But I'm wondering why you felt that sort of that kind of burden and sadness, because I was kind of hoping that all the love that you were receiving, sometimes people only receive this love once they die. You got to see it in real time happen, everyone tell you how great you are. And so did that help or did it make it worse in a
Yeah,
way?
that's the irony of loss. Is a lot of times we think grieving has to be this sad thing. A lot of times grieving is just joy rewrapped into sorrow, because you got to, most of the time when grieving happens, it's thoughts of the great things that happen that cause the sadness. It's not really the sadness itself. So when I think about all these people showering me with love and being grateful for me, I'm obviously so grateful. It's like amazing. uh, it's just a matter of realizing that sometimes that'll make you sad, because that's the things I won't be feeling again. Like those specific feelings, those giving, walking out, giving to the crowd, giving this show, fighting to the death, and then seeing the look in people's eyes in between rounds as you walk to the fence and look through the fence and see that they don't know how you're there. They don't know how you're still standing. And then getting done and uh, seeing, having the belt wrapped around your waist, putting your hands up, and then knowing immediately that there's somebody that they're ready to make me go face to face with, to fight again the second I'm done, that it never really ends. These are things that, I won't be feeling again on that stage. And so when it gets brought back to me, it kind of seems sad. It's like mourning loss. But at the end of the day, it's not loss at all. It's not sadness. It's actually joy. So, there's a dualism in mourning. And it's most of the time what I'm learning when I go through these losses that I feel, it's really, I'm not mourning at all. I'm just so grateful for the happy times I had, and I'm rethinking them. And that's what this has done. It's like I haven't really had a chance to look at my whole career. I never did it. I never went back and looked at my fights too often. I never went back and did those things unless I needed to critique or fix something to get ready for the next opponent. And now going back and saying, "Hey, Dom, take a second and enjoy what you created. Enjoy what you did over 25 years of time." That's a whole process in itself that I haven't allowed, that I'm going through, and that I went through when people showered me with the love that you're talking about. Can only be grateful for it. But the honest truth is, when you're a guy like who's done it, the guilt comes over when you see all the love.
Mm.
It's like, man, do I deserve this? I really just went in there and fought somebody to the death. Does it make me that special? Um, so sometimes you go in and out of it. It's all the feelings
Yeah.
that you feel all the time at different parts of the day. And one of my favorite things is to get to feel each feeling instead of having to box it up and say that's how I need to feel all day. I can feel all of the feelings. I can feel everything, and push through them and just keep moving. And the key is keeping a routine right now.
Are you at peace with it ending this way?
Yeah, well, that's the big question, right? Is anybody, let's say you died tomorrow, would you be at peace with it ending that way? There's a piece of you, I'm sure you would say, well, some things, but some things no. Like my kid would be left behind, whatever, right? You'd have different things. So for me, I'm at peace because this is what I'm given. Whether I want to be at peace or not, it's up to me. It's my choice.
Mm.
So yes, I'm at peace to surrender to the fact that I didn't get to finish the sport in control. That's what it comes down to, right? I thought I could control when I would stop this thing. And my body said no. And the universe or God or whatever anybody wants to believe in, I believe in God, that this happened for me, not to me. So what's the next step? How can I use this? Never waste a good crisis. It's happened to me so many times. I've been through this routine a million times, unfortunately, but also fortunately. It's just the next steps.
So, what's interesting about your position and career, if tomorrow, for whatever reason, someone told me I can't do this job anymore, I wouldn't necessarily be sitting over there and watching someone do this job or producing this show with someone else sitting in this chair. I would probably have to go off and do something else. In your position, you sit cage side and you watch someone do what you were attempting to do, and didn't want to stop doing. And so does that make it easier or does that make it harder? Or do you not even think of it that way?
Well, I mean, I'll bring it back to you again. Like, if this is something that you're passionate about and you love with all your heart, do you really think that you would stop just because you weren't sitting in that seat? Honestly, could you really say that to yourself?
Well, no, if someone said you can't sit here anymore, you're done.
Yeah, same thing. So what are you going to do? You're not, this is your passion, right, Ariel?
Hmm.
So even though you can't sit there, how do you keep giving back to this passion? That's the question I'm in.
Okay.
And when I sit in that seat, that's one of the ways I can do it. First you fight, then you teach, then you heal. That's the martial arts way, right? So I feel I'm somewhat moving towards the teach and heal portion. And by heal, I mean like learning how to take care of your body, teaching these athletes how to not maybe have as many injuries as I had because they take care of it. The UFC PIs have every gift on earth to make sure these guys don't have to go through what I went through with injuries. The rehab, the prehab, the warm-ups, everything. So maybe those are pieces, but that's the question I'd put you into. If you were to lose your job tomorrow, you can't just, if it's truly your passion and you love it as much as you do, you can't just stop it overnight. It basically is like a drug.
Mm.
This thing that I do, this isn't just this thing that I can just up and stop. So for me, it's a gift to get to sit along cage side and give back to the sport that gave to me. The key is giving. When in doubt, focus out. So I'm a little bit in doubt. I don't know where I'm going, what I'm doing exactly. Yeah, I do. It is a little bit of a mourning process. So when I'm in that, yeah, give back. So I find myself giving a lot right now to shift myself back into perspective, which is, be grateful for what you have.
Was there a message or two that you received from someone? Obviously, a lot of I saw the Uriah Faber. I was like, wow, could you imagine 10 years ago Faber writing something nice to Dominic on his Instagram? But personally, privately, publicly, what was there something that you received a note on that day that really touched you?
I've gotten a few notes from some big names. One of the ones that stood out to me was TJ Dillashaw actually reached out to me. I
Wow.
was shocked. He gave me a recommendation for a shoulder doctor and said he was looking forward to watching me compete. Sorry that I couldn't. DJ obviously, Faber obviously, um, Danny Ricciardo from F1.
Yeah.
He recently retired. And so he kind of shared some of his sentiments of what he was going through. And obviously I can relate to that because, he's in a very dangerous sport too. So certain people, in the past, I've had Theo Vaughn reach out to me. That means a lot. Just people who have been through a lot in their life and continue to keep moving forward. Those are the ones that I can resonate with. Not that I can't resonate with everybody. I can
Sure, sure.
accept and be grateful for all of it. But these are the names that stand out to me as people who really put themselves into the fire on a regular basis in their life. And when they reach out, it shows you that there's some sort of strand of connectivity that we're all on. Otherwise, that wouldn't happen. So that's refreshing.
You said that you didn't watch a lot of your fights. When you made that decision, did you pop one in to remember the good days? Did you watch anything?
Man, it's hard. I'm still not quite there yet because I get so worked up about my own performances and just the way that I could be doing better.
Hmm.
Um, I think I need a little bit more time before I'll give myself a break to do that. I'm pretty hard on myself. So I'll get to it. But right now, life's good. Like I said, I'll stay. I'm calling fights March 1st, the weekend, like the first 3 weeks of March, I'm calling fights. So I
Yeah.
get to get back there and that'll be cool. I think the hard part is, like I said, just going up to people and them saying, oh, I'm sorry. It's like, man, I'm not sorry. It's just the next stage for me. But when you see that other people are sorry, it makes you think, should I be sorry? Should I be thinking about
Nah.
this? They think I should, right? I'm just saying that's the humanity. You
Yeah.
can't help it. The thought comes up. So the real thing is like when you hear from certain people that have been through this stuff, they're not sorry. They're excited for you. Like certain guys are just like, I'm pumped for you. And
Yeah.
that's it. That's it. That's all you get. And those are the really like that really supports me because you got two choices. I can be sorry or I can be happy. And it's literally right down the line. And I'm doing my best to choose happy, right? And not because it's forced, but because that's what works.
Hey there, sorry to interrupt. Just want to remind you, if you haven't already, please do hit that subscribe button. We would appreciate it very much. And while you're at it, give us a thumbs up too. You know, we've got live shows, interviews, clips, and a whole lot more going on this here channel. All right, now back to the show. That is a great way, and I could see a recently retired athlete say that type of sentiment. We would lament the loss, but be like, no, now you get to do X, Y, and Z. Now this starts a whole new chapter. And so I can see someone saying that and that really striking a chord. Obviously, we know that you do the great work for the broadcasts as an analyst. You've talked about the PI in Mexico. What do you think will, the broadcasts are once a week, and I know there's prep and whatnot. Like, what do you think you'll get into now? Do you think you'll do something completely outside of the world of fighting?
Well, you know what's funny about what you said is like I could see somebody who's retired to be thinking that way. And the crazy thing, Ariel, is when I blew my knees out 3 times in a row, until I got to this thinking, even though I wasn't retired, I didn't heal. So this happens more in places than just retirement. This happens all over my life, my whole life. It's just little pockets of time that this is a framework that works. And that framework is let go and receive, surrender to the process that God or the universe is giving me. And that was the injuries. When people ever said, you'll never come back, maybe you should just stop. I couldn't. I was fighting it. I'm going to come back. And the second I could just say, hey, maybe I'm not supposed to do this. Maybe I'm supposed to retire. Maybe everything's supposed to be done. My body healed. And then I was able to come back and fight because I was young. I'm older now. So could I come back from this and believe that I could compete? Yes. But do I need to at 40 years old with other work that I could be doing, giving back in other ways? That's where I'm looking at things and seeing what I can do next. The podcast is one thing, Ariel. If you can run a show by yourself this long, you've definitely shown me it can be done by anybody.
Yes. Yeah.
Obviously a joke.
Yeah. No. You're right.
Great at what you do. And but it's like, come on, like this is one thing, and you're seeing a lot of fighters get into it.
Yeah.
That's a piece because it becomes a piece of business. But then there's so many other things. It'll happen naturally. But number one for me is giving back to the athletes. I think I can just provide a lot as a coach, provide a lot as just an advocate in the sport and an advocate for the UFC too. They've done a lot for the sport in general. I know you don't always see it that way, but
that's not really true. That's not true. The funny thing is that I'm probably the biggest UFC promoter outside of anyone who works for the UFC. I've literally devoted my life to speaking about the UFC in a positive light. Of course, there's certain things that get magnified when I'm critical because there is so few people who dare to be somewhat critical. No different than anyone who works in any type of industry or covering any type of industry, general sports talk radio and whatnot. But I'm literally sitting here 4 or 5 hours a day speaking about the UFC. We just had Song on the show talking about his main event. So you know better than that. You know better than that.
I think the key thing for you is the defense to look at, because I said not always.
I know. I do get defensive because it's
pay attention to that though, because that's the first admission of guilt is defense, and it's like, what are you defending? What is there to defend if that's not true in some sort of way?
It's just the constant. You hate the UFC. If I hate the UFC, why the hell am I doing this?
I definitely didn't say that. I definitely
no. But I'm more kind of
you
like
do a good job.
Yeah.
I think, but I said not always. Do you agree?
Sure.
With that,
but that's healthy, right?
It could be, right? As a journalist, I think it is to be neutral. I think that's healthy.
Right. And so now, I thought, again, this might be viewed as a criticism. I was kind of hoping that you would be at the event in Seattle and you would get the send off. You would get a moment, We've seen it. No? Would you not want that? Gloves in the middle of the cage, something like that?
That's what I wanted to do when I was fighting.
Yeah.
That was the plan. They're like, do that whole thing. But, I didn't earn that, did I?
Nah,
These
come
guys
on, man.
These
You
guys
earned
are
it.
go out there. You know what I mean, man? Like, this is what I'm talking about. When you're like, hey, you need to go out there and earn these things. These guys are going to go put their blood on the canvas. They earned that position. They earned that night. I know I've done it in the past, but not that night. I'm there for them. I'm happy what they're doing, and it's sad because I'm one of the 6 people to pull off this card, and that sucks to know that. I'm not. Again, it's another thing I'm just not super ecstatic about, but there's a reason all this happened, right? I'm here. I'm here for it. Let's see what's next.
Could I ask, how do you think that Cejudo Song Yadong fight goes?
I'm excited for it. I was excited for my fight, so I didn't really get a time to think about it right, try to compartmentalize. But now that I've had a little bit of time, I like Song right now. I think that he's looking just really focused and sharp. And then he's got the perfect team to face a Cejudo style, which is, front headlock heavy, wrestling heavy, sprawl and brawl. I mean, it's the perfect thing. And the difference between Henry and me that I think I had so much success. I don't know if I lost you.
No, we got you.
I don't. I think the reason I had success with alpha males is the footwork that I use to cut angles to minimize the shot attempts. Except that I think Song is more of a striker first than a grappler. So I think his striking is going to be extremely sharp, and he has less to worry about with the takedown because his striking is so sharp. I think that's going to really minimize the amount of grappling that Cejudo can do.
Poor Rob Font goes from fighting a legend, right?
Again, we're saying the same thing. It's like it's hard to leave anybody hanging when you're a fighter and you know what they go through. Like he was prepared for that, and the dude's he's fought the who's who of the division for a long time. He deserved a good scrap with me, and I was looking forward to it. I was very ready. I was in extremely good shape. I was peaking when my shoulder came out. So again, Rob Font, respect to you. I'm sorry that I did that to you.
Can I just ask you about one thing that Henry Cejudo said on his podcast, the Pound for Pound podcast? Dominick Cruz, I don't think he really understood how to train. I don't really understand that he really knew how to really take care of his body because he was injured the majority of his career. Do you think that's fair?
I mean, it's his perspective, right? He's allowed to have whatever interpretation he wants, but where does he prove that? Where does he have some scientist that says, "Oh, this is where he did it wrong"? I mean, I've been doing things wrong since the beginning of my career. So for him to, critique injuries after his shoulder injuries and after retiring and then coming back, I think he's just looking at a microscope of himself. It's not really me that he's talking about. He's just explaining himself again.
He's projecting.
That's what it is. Yeah. That's what Henry does. He's a projector.
Favorite moment in the cage, out the cage, favorite moment of your career? When someone says, I want to relive Dominick Cruz's greatest moment, the apex of his career, quintessential Dom, what comes to mind?
Honestly, the interview we did is one. That's why it's pinned on the front, because I was really in the middle of figuring something out on that night, Ariel. I was on antidepressants the entire camp before that fight because of just how sad I was. And 2 weeks before that fight, I got off the antidepressants, 3 weeks, so I could be, do what I needed to do. And thank God my coach was able to recognize the difference. But once I got through that fight and then had the title and felt that it didn't feel any different before I had it, and if anything, it was like, this is it. After everything I just went through, this is all I get. After everything everybody said that it was impossible and it couldn't be done and that there's no chance and all this stuff, like I get this, and then everything's shut down outside and I can't party. There's nothing to do. It's just over. That's when I realized, I don't need a belt to be happy. And you don't. Nobody does. You think that it's going to everybody thinks the belt and the championship's going to fix everything. It doesn't. It gives you more money, and then you can live a more comfortable life if you're lucky. If you're lucky, by the way, and your problems are not fixed. It's up to us. And being happy is a choice. And I realized it literally in that moment when you asked me the question, "Is this the happiest day of your life?" And it's actually, I don't feel any different than when I got it. In fact, I'm a little disappointed that this is all I get. And so that really hit me hard. And that was a moment that I realized, happiness is a choice. It's not a fact. You got to work for it.
I'm actually kind of blown away right now for two reasons. Number one, the fact that you mentioned that blows me away because I almost feel like I talk about that too much because it affected me so much because it's my favorite interaction after a fight ever. But I'm blown away because you just told me two things about that interview which happened almost 10 years ago that I didn't know about. And I feel like we've talked about I didn't know you were on antidepressants up until 2 weeks before the fight.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to talk about in my podcast that nobody knows about because when you're in competition, these are excuses.
Mm.
These are things that people whine about, and I refuse to allow that. Now that I'm done competing, I'm retired, I can share truths that were my experience, and they can't really be used against me in fight terms. Everything that's said, everything is all is fair in love and war. So I've been very careful while I'm at war with all these people and everything that I say on purpose. And that's going to be the next journey for me is letting people really see who I actually am behind the fighter on the podcast and everything else that I do in my life because I no longer have to prepare for war every single day of my life. Now I get to move towards the love and war mixed together. And, you know, when you come from love, everything can show up a lot different and people can know more of me from there. But when I'm at war, they're only going to see that version. And that's a hard version of me to get to know.
But could I just ask, and I understand you want to save this stuff for the pod. You were about to fight for the belt. Why were you on antidepressants?
Well, because I had blown my knee out 3 times in 2.5 years, plus a torn quad off the bone. And I was sad that I couldn't compete and I was sad that I couldn't train. I was depressed. I had lost my drug. And that's another thing. So I had to, you know, when you exercise every single day since you're 11 years old, and then all of a sudden you cut that chemical out of your body, you're no longer exercising, you're no longer because you can't. It's a literal chemical makeup change. And it made me really sad and it made me really low. Not to mention that my life wasn't working separate from fighting. The only thing that was working in my life was fighting. And then once fighting got taken away, all I saw was everything that wasn't working. It was my relationships, it was my friendships, it was my family friendships. It was, did I have people to support me when I was hurt? No. I felt very alone. I felt very isolated. And it's because I was a miserable person to be around. And so I didn't create an environment that facilitated people to be around me. These are all things that I learned through those process to where now I'm able to flip all those thought processes back, reframe everything, and now I don't show up the same way. So as I've gone through each injury, I've learned a different piece of myself that needed to get attention. And the biggest part was learning how to create happiness in my life on my own. It wasn't just something you're born with. You're born with a chemical imbalance. Your dad was depressed, so you're depressed. Your mom's got drug problems, so you're depressed. No, happiness is a choice, and I had to do the work for it. And thank God for the injuries because they threw me into not having the sport where I got to feel how miserable I was and then focus on those things. And when I focused on those things, now I have those tools for the rest of my life. And that's the culmination of everything I learned when doing that interview after winning my belt and before it. I was on antidepressants and I was scared to get off of them because I was scared to turn into the crazy person that I was. And then when my coach saw that my training wasn't the same and he got me off of them and said, "You're not, something's off. Are you still on them?" And I said, "I was on the tiniest amount, but I was scared to get off." And it was legal. I was able to take all that stuff. So it was just like, he's like, "Get off, cut it." So at 3 weeks, I cut it off and I started winning rounds. And it was really, thank God for Eric Telfero. And it's the reason why you got to have that person that you trust because he could see things normal. No, if I would have brought in a new coach, they wouldn't have seen that in me.
Right.
He saw it in my sparring. He said, "You haven't won a sparring round the entire camp. Something's off. You just don't seem to give a shit. You don't seem to care." And it was that little sliver of just, "Oh, well, you know, I'll be all right. I'll get through it." The little sliver of antidepressant. And when he got me off that, I started caring and caring about winning, caring about losing. It was a different version of me, something unlocked. And that's how I walked into that fight. You know, I got off all that 3 weeks early and everything was just, I was just sober me. And the antidepressants I recommend them to anybody who needs like floaties. Sometimes you need floaties in life. Sometimes you need something to help you tread water because treading is just too heavy and you start sinking. So I don't bash it. I think there's a timing for antidepressants for everybody in their life if necessary. Everybody's different, but it really kind of saved my life at that portion. And then fighting brought me back into sobriety, into life, into realizing that the joy of life. And then after that, I kept the ball rolling. I've never touched antidepressants again in my life. I'll never need them again. I've learned a lot of different tools from that process as well. And so, yeah, again, nothing's perfect. Everything might look perfect on the outside for a lot of us, the strongest people in the world, but we're all going through hell like anybody else. And it's just, can you get through it?
I also didn't know, by the way, that you came to that realization, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding, in the interview. Did you come to the answer that you gave, happiest moment of my life is when I realized I didn't need the belt to be happy? Did you come to the realization in the interview itself when you felt the belt on your shoulder and you realized I don't need this to be happy?
Yes, and you can see it in my response. I had to think about it because it's like I was thinking, like, is this actually the happiest version of my life? It's like, no, it's not. It's the belt. This is once I won it, like I said, I was like, kind of like, this is it. I mean, I don't want to ruin it for people, but it's like,
No, I get it. I get it.
the amount of work I did to get to that point and the amount of people that told me it wasn't possible, and then I did it, and then nobody goes, you were right, Dom, it is possible. You don't hear any of that. All you hear is silence. You don't hear anybody say how miserable you look and how bad you look and that you have no chance. All you hear is that. And then when you win, you don't hear any of the other side, which is, wow, you actually did it. Wow, you're stronger than I thought. Wow, your media doesn't do that. Nobody does that. They just go, wow. I mean, well, I guess Dom did it. Ring rust doesn't exist for him. No, ring rust doesn't exist for anybody. It's a choice to believe in ring rust. I'm not just some special person. And that's another example of what I mean. People, it doesn't stick with people. I did something that people thought was impossible. I got told it every day. And after it's done, they just go, well, okay. So, end of the day, it's just, that was, when you asked me that question, it made me realize, like, no, this doesn't make me more happy. It's a cherry on top, but life is really good.
What a story. What a career. Happy birthday to your mother, by the way. And hopefully I got that date right. And happy early birthday to you, early March, right?
Yeah, you didn't get it wrong this time. Look at you. Yeah, that was embarrassing that one time.
It was incredible because you let me do it for so long. You let me do the whole song, the candle. I was so sure of myself, and then you
would expect nothing less from me.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. You're the man, Dom. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. I know you've talked enough about all of this, but I really did want to speak to you and yeah, you've meant so much, and it was really such a joy to cover your career. It was really I'll never forget those fights, those moments, WEC, UFC, and so I thank you for those memories. I thank you for those fights. I thank you for sacrificing your body for our entertainment, and I know for your own goals and achievements as well, and can't wait to see what you do, and can't wait for the podcast to launch. Do we have a date? Do we have a time and place? What do we got?
I don't have a date for launch yet, but for instance, I'm going to be driving up, meeting people, and we're going to get this done right. It's not going to be some halfway thing. So,
all right,
it'll be good.
Okay.
And you'll know more about it. We'll post more about it. But
I look
Cruz
forward
is
to
me.
it.
Name of it.
Can't wait. Thank you, Dom. Appreciate it, and congratulations again on a Hall of Fame career.
Thanks, man.
There he is, the great Dominick Cruz. A true original, a true pioneer, a trailblazer. I love those conversations with Dom because you could get really deep. And by the way, in case you've never seen that interview that we talked about, it was January. It was a Sunday night show in Boston, January 2016, UFC, FS1, Dominick Cruz, TJ Dillashaw. He fights TJ, he beats TJ, and he says this. Final thing, would you say, and you've had big moments in your life, is tonight the greatest moment of Dominick Cruz's life?
No. The greatest moment in my life was realizing that I didn't need a belt to be happy.
Wow. I can't imagine how much happier you are now.
There you go. Now it's a cherry on top.
Yeah. That's January 17th, 2016. I will now forever look at that interview differently That was almost 10 years ago now. And yeah, I never really quite looked at the pause as something significant, but now you see the pause. And we've talked about that interview before. I didn't realize that he came to that realization in the interview. What a time. Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us. Also, give us a thumbs up, leave a nice comment. These things go a long way. And while you're here, do check out the rest of the channel. We've got live shows and full interviews, clips, and a whole lot more. We're doing big things here, and we appreciate your support very much.